This is Thursday, the 26th of October 2018, for the first PhD Masterclass of the academic year 2017-18. Let's just go around the room. The reason I'm laughing is it doesn't take very long to go around the room here. Alan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Alan Brenor. I'm a teaching fellow at both University College London and also Queen Mary's University London, both of the law faculties, and I specialise in financial services, having been a regulator a long time ago, and having recently retired from working in financial services, most lately with Santander back in the UK. And I'm also doing a PhD, and that's at Queen Mary's, and it's in the relationship between macroprudential regulation and conduct regulation in the UK housing market.
So there's lots about mortgages in there.
Lots about mortgages, yes. Not buy-to-let, but residential mortgages.
To your left, I'm Calvin Jackson, and I'm also doing a PhD, but I'm doing the PhD here on the regulation of executive pay. I'm also a practicing member of the bar, and so I'm full-time here while I'm doing the PhD, but I'm also still keeping my hand in practice. In fact, I'm in court tomorrow, because it's impossible to just disappear for 3 years, because all the solicitors would say, "Where's he gone? Is he retired?" So one has to do both.
My name is Garnet Arthur. Yeah, I'm also with IALS, doing my PhD. Actually, I'm specializing in oil and gas law. My background actually has been business, and I've actually done an MBA, and previously I've worked as an accountant with KPMG. But I just want to,
yeah. I used to be long time ago.
Okay, yeah. So I just want to add some bit of commercial law for trace to my business.
So what year are you in?
I'm just beginning, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, I had started earlier, suspended for a little while, and then came back in. So I'm just at the beginning.
Because Alan's just starting his third year, and I'm just starting my third year.
I'm Valentino Quaggiato. I'm doing a part-time PhD here at IALS in International Space Law. I work full-time, I'm supposed to be working full-time in the space industry, so I'm not from a legal background, I'm from an engineering background, and I'm trying to pursue a comparative study. Not across jurisdiction, but between legal frameworks. So using international environmental law for the ozone layer, compared to the sustainability and evolution in the outer space environment. And I think I've been out 2 years, so I'm coming back now, and I had to stay for a couple of years. And I'm due for my mini viva on spring 2018. So I'm trying to get the material ready for passing that benchmark, and then hopefully carry on to PhD stages.
So we're quite a good spreader, aren't we? Because we've got one at the beginning, one coming up to the mini viva stage, and 2 old lags.
Both of you, they are already over the mini viva.
Yes.
So it's slightly different at Queen Mary's, where you have a first-year assessment which takes place about 9 months after you start, and then you have a second-year assessment, which is it's about a year and a half after you start, and I think there's a third-year assessment as well at that stage. But there's definitely a major hurdle for the first 12 to 9 months, and then further another hurdle. And there is there is a mini viva, and you have to submit recollection about 8,000 words for the first.
Okay. In IALS is 10,000 words at the moment.
Yeah.
If you want a bit of assistance for the mini viva, just come and ask me, and I'll be happy to tell you if there are any tricks to the trade, as it were. It was, for me, a completely worthwhile and painless experience. It was not like being in court, where you're trying to present something that you're having the greatest difficulty in deciding what argument would stand the best chance of success. It was very straightforward.
The more social feedback and supportive element to your research than a critical one.
Yeah, well, direction mostly for me. It was, have you thought about this? We're surprised not to see a bit of that, which were very strong hints as to where they thought I ought to be going for the future.
Okay. It's more like a guidance in the future.
Yeah, so did you find it like that?
Yes,
It's thrash you with birch twigs.
No, I was going to say it was completely painless, but largely because of two reasons. One is the work you've done beforehand, the 8,000 words or 10,000 words that you've submitted, and also huge factor, or two huge factors. One is you have to submit a quite a lengthy written report as well, which sets out essentially what you're trying to do, your plan, how to get there, where you are against your plan, what are you going to be doing next. So I think my report was, from memory, about 14, 15 pages with diagrams and all that. And then the other really critical bit was the report from the two supervisors, and provided all those sort of blocks are in place, then the actual life of it was quite painless. It wasn't, as you said, it wasn't at all tricky.
I mean, if you give a route map of that sort of what you've got to do, what you and your supervisor have got to do together, and then the timings for the various chapters being submitted, etc., and then what the university's got to do in terms of the various forms that have got to be filled in, and going down to, Alan was telling me the other day about his binding. Well, you didn't tell me where you got it done. I'm going to find that out.
And no, I just went, sorry, this is...
practical things.
It was a practical thing, yes, I made it up. I gave my two supervisors both an electronic copy of my first draft of the thesis. They've seen it in individual chapters, but it was the first time seeing it together, and the bibliography. And I also printed off a hard copy. I printed off a hard copy as well, which is 500 something pages, when 1.5 space, everything comes out of it. And then I went to, I just walked down Kingsway, there's a law factory right there, and about 10 yards down there are lots of printers and binders, and I went to one called, I can't remember, Magenta Media, and they were very good, and I just said I wanted an acetate cover and backing and a spiral binder, they did it there a bit, and it's £4.50 per copy. So.
Very reasonable, definitely reasonable.
Yeah.
So you're now waiting for your final Bible.
Well, I'm waiting for a few things. First thing, I'm waiting for comments back, which will take them some time because it's not a lot to read in one go. So they'll come back with lots of detailed comments. Depending on what they say, then I will contact, they've suggested some people, and my supervisor will contact those people if they are the right ones, and set up the viva, which will it takes at least 6 months to organise. So I'm well into the first half of next year.
But basically, your main body of work is done. Apart from the changes that you will have to introduce them.
Yes. So sorry, I'm touch wood and hedge my bets and whatever at this point. I've no idea what they'll say, but and there could be some major rewriting of that, which is
Maybe, yes. Maybe. Well, that's good. Well done.
one of my colleagues. She has just submitted her second draft. I don't. That's unusual. Most times I only ever look at one draft. But this thing comes in like that.
Oh yes, 500 pages. Yes.
Yeah, the bibliography is 70, 80 pages. I looked up at about 1,000 items.
So we've had two introductions. Would you like to say who you are?
Is it?
If you tell us who you are.
Oh, I'm Lavina Tudor.
Ah, you're Lavina. Hello. And you are in charge of the law review this year, is that right?
Yes, and the student rep for PhD.
Yes. So you, in fact, why don't you take the job of organising the masterclasses, Lavina, and you'll have all three of them.
Because I have one more year to go. So it will be already with two other things. The editor-in-chief and the student rep coming into the master class will take my time because I'm trying to finish within 3 years.
Yes.
So I don't want an extension. So it's not it's not that easy.
Yes. So you're quite busy enough already.
Yes.
And what's your PhD on?
It's actually an economic crime. I'm writing on the future of anti-money laundering regulations and its implication in developing economies.
And you're doing this, who is here at IALS?
No. Not at all. It's outside IALS. Mine was a rather uncommon situation. I had to change my supervisor and topic after first year. Because
I remember this.
Yes.
I remember.
Yes, because what happened was that it's like my former supervisor felt I was moving too fast. So, being an international student, having international fees to pay, it wasn't funny. So I now thought, because I have published in the past with him, how can I divorce him without having any wrinkles? So it was a difficult one, but I had to boldly apply for a change of topic, that I was changing my PhD topic. So on the basis of changing the topic, I also changed supervisor. One funny thing which I try to advise incoming students is that at times it's good for you to research on a supervisor before going to him. You don't just go in blindly. I went in blindly. So but on the second time, I now had to research on supervisors and I'm now approach certain. And the one I am working currently with, I'm very comfortable with her. But the only bad thing in my whole process is that I wasted a whole year doing nothing. So I now had to use another year to have an upgrade. So I did an upgrade within 1 year. Then currently, we have targets and which I'm trying to finish on or before the end of next year. So it's always good for one to research on a supervisor. It helps a lot. If you go in blindly like myself, maybe somewhere along the line you could get stuck because I know even though it is your work, a supervisor's input is very helpful because part of how far I have gone currently is because of the supervisor I had. Without her, I don't think I would have made it this far. She has been so supportive, gave me certain things like a way to make my work a bit easy, gave me a structural, for instance, we had agreed on 100,000 words. And she now told me you have to divide it into 10 chapters. So making it 10 chapters and trying to aim at least 10,000 words a chapter made it easy. Unlike maybe if you have just 3-4 chapters and you're trying to, how will I fix in 25,000 words in one chapter? It's more difficult. So what we did from the beginning was that I now had to look for an outline for 10 chapters. And I now saw that breaking it into 10 chapters and headings made it easier than if I had had just 4 or 5 chapters. Then another thing about PhD is that one of the ways I have gone this far is that you have to keep writing. At least don't go to bed without typing 200-300 words, because it may not be every day, but try and make that your target. That way it makes it also easier. I have observed that it's writing more or less has a methodology, a system. And another thing an input I had from her was that you gather your materials in chapters. You have to put them together. Oh, this is for chapter 1, this is for chapter 2, this is for till the end. That way it made it easy. So what I did was that after I had left my first supervisor and I had an outline, I now had to gather materials. I wasted much time gathering materials into chapters. By the time I was able to have enough material into chapters, writing wasn't that a problem. And so I had to sit down, synthesize this material. It's just that the only issue I had was that there were times I wrote in which I'm not saying it should happen to you, and you are like, did I really write that? And you will just cancel everything and start all over again. But it's quite interesting. I have enjoyed it. I don't think I would have wished for any other way. It's quite interesting. It's quite educative. It's a lonely race. Like, apart from meeting ourselves like this, we may never meet again. But I've had a supervisor who has been able to take me to conferences free. Yes, she has been able to recommend it to conferences on economic crime, accommodation paid, feeding paid, transportation. So I keep saying that at times the supervisor matters, because you could have someone who has the interest, not just supervising the interest of students, the student he or she is supervising at time. Some don't. So that's just my...
Well, Lavina, you should have been one of the panel members.
No, not at all.
You
Not at all.
you told us, well, I mean, one of the sort of 3 things I sort of wanted to make sure that we covered was the supervisor relationship.
Okay.
And it sounds to me as if you've gone from hell to heaven, if you see what I mean. And I hope it continues. So, going through the rest of us, we've got starting the third year, starting at the beginning, really, yes, and sort of in the second year,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
I'm starting my 10th year.
Yeah,
But really, you're second.
and so in terms of actually finishing it this year, are you going to be able to finish it in this academic year?
I think so, because what's happened, my supervisor first of all told me, you cannot present less than 4 chapters for an upgrade. From the beginning she told me that. I won't collect, because most people present 1 or 2 chapters. And she said, I won't collect that from you. I have a reputation, I have a name. So she was always at me, what have you done? Where are you? And the emails clouded. That's why I say if you have a supervisor who has you at heart. So I had to present 4 chapters, 40,000 words for my upgrade.
I see.
Yes.
I think that's probably the plan my supervisor wants to take, because he's giving me targets to try and get through many of my chapters before my outline is finally approved. So he's asking me to get material literature on almost all the chapters, and then write up to some number of chapters before I think my final outline.
Because she told me if I submit 1 or 2 chapters for an upgrade out of 10, then the possibility of finishing is not there. Because that is the mistake some people do. But well, it depends on how many chapters they have. That if you have 10 chapters and you're submitting 1 or 2, that is not good. Because she said that she is not counting my conclusion in, but that she wants 50% of my work, and that 50% of my work to her will be up to chapter 4. That I had to submit that in for an upgrade, so that by that time I have had comments So I know that half of my work is done. I have had critique on the 4 chapters. I have had comments, not something that towards the end, I start having critique from maybe 3rd chapter onward, but that I have had, like, the only critique I had 2 external examiners. They were quite, they were impressed with my work. The only critique I had, in which, well, it's a hint to you in case you don't have, they said I didn't have a theoretical framework. Like most of us in the legal field, most writings they have seen don't have a theoretical framework, but that the normally theoretical framework is in the social sciences, but that they feel that we should have a theoretical framework. So they now ask me that I have to go and insert a theoretical framework, that I may not be challenged now, but that at the end of it, whoever is coming as external will definitely, like that, like 85% of the students are asked, you have to have a theoretical framework. So they now told me that I had to go and within those 4 chapters, maybe a lengthy part of my first chapter, I have to include my theoretical framework. That even there, who are external examiners today, had the same issue. At the very end, they were now asked, where is your theoretical framework? And it had to take them back to start formulating one which delayed their work. So that now that they have seen what I have done, now they have seen the loopholes and lacuna I have, that I should go and insert a theoretical framework. That was all they said. And they now said that my work was more or less a little bit passionate, so that I should try and divorce myself from my work. That they can see the passion I have in the topic, in the work, but that in academics I should try and be a little bit neutral. I should divorce myself from the work. On the whole, they said it was very good and they were impressed.
Did you write it in the first person? Or did you say, I did this, I did that,
No,
or
I didn't.
the researcher did this, the researcher did that?
I wrote that. I said the researcher did this. It could be seen, things like that, but then now said that I should try as much as possible to divorce myself from the work. So.
And was your work empirical or theoretical or a mixture of both? Because I think it depends whether the work's empirical or not.
Mine is theoretical.
It's theoretical. And yours has got a bit of empirical. You did a few interviews.
I did about 20 interviews of senior policymakers.
Well, that sounds pretty empirical, yes.
So it's people who are either were in government or aspire to be in government,
Okay.
or were senior regulators, or actually are senior regulators now, plus some industry people as well. But that was all unattributable, not recorded, which is very different to yours. And how to put it, they provide, let's call it confirmation, largely, of the work that's been done, largely because they've been on the record in terms of what they said, so it's not actually, they're not saying things which are that different to what they were saying in public.
Yeah, I did over 50 interviews
I
and
know.
recorded them all and transcribed them all. And so I did that, but I've also got a panel of 6 for what I call a flying test bed, where I'll take my provisional conclusions to that panel of 6 separately and get their comments to test it again in the real world. Are you thinking of doing theoretical or empirical?
I think I'll be more of empirical. Yeah.
What sort of interviews, or quantitative? Are you going to do lots of algebra?
I think it's going to be more of interviews.
Because you've got the MBA stuff in your background, you might like to do something quantitative as well.
Yeah, I would have liked to, but given the nature of my topic, I think it will be more of an empirical approach based on interviews and
Yes.
the views of people.
My supervisor wanted to make certain that I stayed within the domain of law, even though it brings in some sociology and quite a lot of economics, and there's too much, and also political as well. But she was concerned that it was veering too much towards the economic, element, which is a very big area. And essentially it's where economics and law join or don't join. But you want to be stable on the legal side.
Yeah, I think I have a similar problem because when I introduced my topic, it felt more like I was assessing how these legal procedures and legal framework would impact on the positively or negatively on the economy.
Yeah.
And they were asking me to be careful because it's not for the lawyer to be able to prove the effectiveness or efficiency of law in terms of, although there has been a lot of theoretical backgrounds to the link between law and economics. They were asking me to be careful because it's going to be it's going to be an uphill task to try and prove, how positively or negatively a certain legislative framework has impacted on the economy.
It comes down to, yes, you're not going to be able to create a sort of a economic model that does that, and you won't. I certainly haven't got the maths to do that. But what you can do is use these back interviews, people, their opinions, and these are people whose opinions are important, saying what they think in exactly that issue. Is what is the effect of a piece of law regulation on let's call it economic assessment.
Yeah.
So did you have to go through a ethical commission?
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did.
Yeah. So it's across the board for anything involving University of London.
You have to now positively count yourself out if you're not going before the ethics committee, and that's come in probably while you're partway. It's probably while you were way busy working.
Yeah, because they came back on my ethical commission, and I thought, well, I'm pretty sure that's in terms of space law. We're not going to involve any, well, definitely in my research there is nothing that is relevant from an ethical.
Essentially, it touches on people.
Yeah.
You have to go and get
exactly. I don't have anything
so
human really apart from the international treaties or any other action.
But you're not doing interviews.
No.
Well, that's
I did, initially because my research developed on several stages, and I did some informal in the company where I was working at. I did some informal interviews, mainly to have some sort of hint on where to take my research. As a matter of fact, I went the opposite way. So the stronger advice was, find a business case coming from law for the industry to prosper.
Yeah.
And I'm going the opposite way. The typical example is, the seat belt in the car that, make everybody to wear the seat belt and for health and safety reasons, but at the same time provide the industry for the new component to make and so on. But I went the opposite way, that I'm going towards sustainability. So if actually the industry wants to prosper, the context that need to be operating in has to be according to that legal framework. Otherwise it wouldn't be. So, I'm probably going to mention that, from my work experience, that was a suggestion and a possibility to actually, for the scope of my research, I went in a different direction. So.
And what do you see as being, when you finish a PhD, the outcome from it in terms of who are the people who are likely to access it, and what are they likely to do as a result?
Well, ideally, I would like to, sort of providing a opportunity for policymakers to think that, we did, being a comparative study, the aim is to come up with something valid was done in this legal framework, so possibly we can act in the space arena in a similar way, and that can be beneficial. I doubt, because unfortunately space is a strategic field, so there are always defense and military issue involved, and also it's very difficult nowadays to find international agreement, really. So it's becoming more sort of bilateral, multilateral point of agreement more than a UN level of agreement. So obviously.
And is there some sort of agreement, for example, on space junk and what's
But
going to happen with
that's
that?
my topic. There is not really agreement on that because
That sounds a bit dangerous.
yes, that's why I moved towards the sustainability, because say, well, if as everybody, more and more nations, they're trying to have their foot in the space industry and make use of the resource. They need to be sure that they are actually it's going to be beneficial for them. No, it's going to be a complete catastrophe. So, but obviously the stakeholders that have been the most responsible for the pollution, they don't want to take responsibility to fork out the bill and get the cleaning activity. So that's why the starting point was a big policy when eventually got to the idea of the ozone layer, because back in the 80s everybody was scared and panicking that life on Earth is going to finish because we are all using
aerosols.
Aerosol gas that was damaging the ozone, and then when we lost the ozone layer, we're going to be bombarded by radiation. And actually, from a scientific point of view, those ideas are still standing. And but luckily, what we have been doing now basically got to a point that we were safe, at least for now. And that was the same situation where developed countries were in the position not to use those gas and those aerosols anymore. Developing country and new industrialized countries like China, India, they said, why do we have the obligation to do something different? You have been polluted for the past 40 years, and now we have, to start a more expensive and more R&D, more research and development in those areas because you damage the environment. So, but there was a big push in the 80s towards that. The Vienna Convention and the Montreal treaty, they were very successful. They were the first universal treaty in the history of UN. And so there was a big push where in space things have changed dramatically. There was a sort of a policy agreement between the Soviet Union and the United States back in the 50s and the 60s where everything was starting. But now it's very fragmented. Everybody is thinking, I just want to do what I want to do. And there is no legal framework, therefore it's a big Far West. Let's go there and somebody else will take care of it.
I can see a purpose then, a practical purpose to what you're working on.
Yes,
It could save the world.
Well, let's say the outside
No
of
pressure.
the water.
Will you all save the world, do you think?
No.
So coming back to it, do you have the Paris, the Paris Accord,
Paris?
agreement?
No, in the environment. No, I'm just going back because that was the difficult debate that I keep changing the legal framework that I was using to compare to. Because every time that I was looking at international environmental law, knowing zero about it, I was always finding something that was developing and coming to fruition and so on. Where with the ozone layer, we got to the stage where actually we made a physical improvement. The results is there. What has been done is there. The hole in the Antarctic pole is shrinking, so we can prove that there is an effectiveness of the legal framework, of the policy and the legal activity that has been done. So that's why I want to go from something has been done well, and this one is bad. So let's try to, get something working together. But nowadays, I try need to keep my scope pretty limited because not being a lawyer, otherwise I was all over the place.
I'm wondering whether we, that's very interesting. I'm wondering whether we shouldn't just do our top tips, as it were, because I think we've got the top tips on supervisors, because Lavina's already done that. But Alan, do you want to do a few top tips?
Do a few, yes, Lavina covered quite a lot of them. Just going back on the supervisors one, yes, I chose my supervisor because you're absolutely right, it has to be the right person and you have to be able to work with them, and they do the same as well. So that has worked out very well. In terms of other top tips, as you said, Lavina, start writing from day one. Just write. Has anyone seen that, or read the book, or seen there's a film called I Captured the Castle by Dodie Smith, the same person who wrote 101 Dalmatians. Anyway, it's about a writer who's got a writer's block. He's had writer's block for about 12 years, and eventually his daughter sort of playfully imprisons him and just says, write. Doesn't matter what you write, even if you write the cat sat on the mat, just write it. And that's what he does. And he actually writes a book with the title, The Cat Sat on the Mat. But the same sort of point, just write. It doesn't really matter too much what you write, just write. In terms of titles, like I've said, just don't worry too much about the actual title you use. Just make up a title which is more or less in the right area, and as you work on, you'll come back and refine it. So, head back to filmmaking, it's a working title. As Lavinia, as you're saying, is get your structure out really quickly. There are a number of books on how to write a PhD, which I read before I started, and they suggested sort of 12 chapters. Okay, and I looked at this and had a go, and eventually I ended up with 9 chapters, including introduction and conclusion. They're most uneven in terms of length. They are one chapter at one point was 52,000 words and got broken up into 2 chapters covering different aspects of the same subject. But once you've got your structure, your chapters in, as you said, subheadings, you start to get a framework, and you've done very early on. So my chapters all have lots and lots of subheadings. Every paragraph, almost every paragraph, had a subheading. Simply because what is that paragraph about, or what is that section about, and how does it relate to the overall plan? Someone described it as being so what, so why are you writing this? What is its importance? How does it contribute to bring the whole? And then, sort of next step is devising an overarching plan. I think, Lavinia, you weren't here, but I said that as part of my first year assessment, which takes place about 9 months after you start, you have to submit quite a detailed plan as to what you're trying to do, how you're going about it, how you got on so far, and where you're going next. And a large chunk of that is the structure, and also your plan as to where you've been, where you are now, where you're going, and you can draw it out diagrammatically as to where you want to be all the way through. And I ended up with both the overarching plan and then monthly plans as to how I was going to get there, and then weekly, and then daily. So it's quite detailed. I don't know if anyone uses Gantt charts. It was sort of
yeah, at work, yes.
Yes, it's work. It's a basic way of doing planning, project planning, yeah, from my work when I was there, and it's very common. But it's nothing particularly special. It's just essentially a very long timeline, and you can use a program, or you can use Excel spreadsheets, or you need to do it in Word. But essentially it has your timeline and how you're going to do it step by step by step, with various points along that, including your assessment process as well. So third-party assessment. And then you plot how you're getting on against that timeline, and you flex it. Things do change. And then yes, in terms of writing, yes, aim for 200 to 500 words each day. Again, a lot of that you'll probably end up discarding, but it does mean that you have targets and you have achievements, and you can see how you're getting on. The other element which is close related is getting your bibliography done, work done straight away, right at the beginning. In parallel, when I see something or read something, it goes into the bibliography, so I can see that it's building up. So you don't have to create a bibliography at the end, it's happening as you go along. And again, not just writing targets, but also reading targets as well, in terms of getting information read and into the bibliography. I started off making notes about what I was reading, and quite early on realised that was a misuse of my time, not waste of misuse of my time, and that what I could actually do is copy and paste big chunks of almost all of this online into my chapters. I put them in prose and in different colours, so I know they're not they're not original, they're someone else's. But it does save time having to go and make lots of notes about things, and you don't have to start worrying about where did I get that from, because you put it in there and it's got a reference and it's going into the bibliography. So you're at the same time you're covering a whole lot of things you need to do, and later on you don't have to come back and say, where on earth did I get that from? Which is a big issue. You're trying to recreate something afterwards.
Yes.
In terms of other things, I've used a professional proofreader towards the end of what I've been doing. If you can afford it, it's definitely worth doing, particularly someone like me who's prone to typos all over the place. So that worked, seems to have worked out well.
And do you mind me asking how much you pay?
Yeah, that's what I want to ask.
It works out at £500 for 100,000 words.
Wow.
£500 for 100,000 words?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a set figure.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's very reasonable.
It's not
Yeah,
bad.
I thought, sorry, my view is that the amount of work this poor person had to do, I was quite impressed by that, because it is a big chunk of work.
But were you satisfied by what he did? Because
Yes, yeah.
Because I'm now trying to compare the price to the, you understand?
Yeah.
You could like,
They picked up lots of things that I missed, no matter how many times I would have read it, I would have missed. It's a big fan. There are other things that they came up with I didn't agree with.
But that's your own work, so you can decide it.
But yeah, what happens is, I've got no other experience other than I've never used proofreading before, is that I phoned up this person, the name was recommended to me, I phoned up this person, they said, fine, we agreed it with a very short contract, sign, you send them the chapters in the right order, but one or two chapters every couple of weeks, and they get them in the right order, they can see what you're trying to do. They turn them, this individual turned them around within a week, 2 weeks.
Very good.
And it's all track changes, which is fine, and then you go through it after they've finished and decide which ones you want to accept and which ones you don't. Stranded.
But they just do spelling, grammar.
Okay, this particular person offered 2 levels of service. Okay. The first one is, as you say, is syntax, grammar, punctuation, which is what I use them for. And then there's another service which is what it calls sort of Englishizing your text. So if English is not your first language, this proofreader would go through it and get the tenses right and let's call the phraseology correct. So I didn't use that, and that obviously would cost more because that's more work. But I used them for, yes, typos, spelling, syntax, and punctuation. She made, being fair, she also made comments about, this sentence is overcomplicated, which is correct.
Often in the
Yeah, so that's a sort of above and beyond the
scope
brief.
of the contract.
Yeah. And there were other bits where, she said this is complicated, this one's unclear. I'm trying to find other examples. You've used this word too many times, which is fair enough. These are all valid points. And
Well, like law.
like law, yes. You suddenly realise actually that when someone reads it and points it out, that you end up like little ticks, things that you keep doing and you do too often. It's okay once or twice, but it's too frequent in the exercise. So yes, no, it was great to have someone go through it. And she's got no knowledge of the subject, and she may have had no knowledge of the subject when she'd finished, but she had a good go at it. And I say something like this is what she was saying. That's very, you've got track changes, you can pick and choose. It's down to you what you do. What else? Again, I think that many of you have done it all. You've said what you would be doing. I go to as many lectures, seminars, conferences as I possibly can. I should add most of the ones my area are free, and mostly in London. But it's great to do that, first because you get different perspectives. And the other one is that you have a chance to talk to people who are experts in particular aspects of the field. And what I find, I learn huge amounts from this, as well as doing the interviews, but you also get an indication as to what's going on. And in my one, it covers mortgages and housing. So I went along to the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. They do a mortgage conference in London every year, and I went to one of them to talk to people who are in the field and to hear about what their concerns are and what worries them. And it gives me a good background. And I talked to the chief economist of RICS, Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, and he's on radio and TV quite frequently because people are really concerned about house prices, and they do they do a monthly survey which breaks it down, and it's very authoritative. So these are good things to do. And the final one is that I've learned, and people told me as well, is don't anguish over difficult points, just get on. If it's too difficult, put it to one side, come back to it. You probably find it's sorted itself out, and just move on. That's it.
Thank you, Alan. I think my bit can be a bit shorter than that because Alan and Lavina actually covered almost every point I was going to make. I think one of the key ones I was going to mention, though, is that I really do think people need to take advantage of IALS in terms of the sheer diversity of the research students here is enormous. It's almost the sort of unique selling point of IALS that it takes on people that maybe have more life experience or have come to something rather later than the classic 25-year-old or 24, 23-year-old PhD student. And it is worth trying to tap into that if possible, because I found that last year I was asked to read 3 PhDs when they were in a pretty final draft stage. And I found it's interesting hearing what you were saying, because the review is always on those 2 levels. One is whether they're typos and whether the abbreviations are all tied up and everything. But the other was all 3 of them were for people where English was not their first language, and making sure it was idiomatically correct, and also that it's sort of it read in an attractive way to encourage the reader, rather than the reader going, oh my God, I've got another 300 pages of this. It's sort of very dense, very sort of hard to read, paragraphs of a whole page, etc. That you really will find that people don't like reading that much. And so I found that reading other people's PhDs actually was incredibly helpful to me as well, because it gave me various ideas on what to do. Other things I'd mentioned, that the research fellows' lunches that I think are on about 4 times a year or so, the graduate students are invited to, there was one yesterday, are actually well worth attending, because it's probably unlikely that you'll find that someone else is doing something that's on point, as it were, but the way they approach the work is actually rather interesting, and one can get ideas from that. I think the other thing I'd say is I've always tried to think, what am I going to do when the PhD is over? Because it's like everything in life. If you just focus on one thing, it's like coming up to the edge of a cliff and you go, oh, wow, I wish I'd packed a parachute. That you do have to think all the way through about where it's going and what it leads to. And we were going last year to have the last masterclass session, a careers session, but that didn't work out for various reasons. But for this year, we've got agreement that a member of the academic staff will actually be able to cover people who want an academic career, and then no doubt well, the 2 of us could cover practice or
other careers.
Yes, other careers.
Yes, I do.
There are other careers, you know. You don't have to be an academic, but if you want to be an academic, God bless. But there are other careers as well, or one can combine the 2 things. So I'd say take advantage of IALS, because it's a pretty unique sort of institution compared to your average 24-year-old student who's like working like a beaver on a PhD. But I'm sure we have a few of those, not many of them. Are there lots of those at Queen Mary?
No, it's. I think it's fair to say everyone I've come across, I think, at Queen Mary's has worked for 5, 10, sometimes many more years. So, in practice, in public service, sometimes in business. I have to be slightly careful because my cohort is at the Centre for Commercial Law, so essentially they are a business-focused group. And I don't know the other people. I never see the other people doing PhDs in Queen Mary's. It's a commercial law group, so they are doing intellectual property and copyrights, and there's another group of people doing alternative dispute resolution, and then there are a very small number of people doing finance and business and banking type areas.
The SAS ones are worth going to as well. They do, the students come in and explain how they're doing their PhDs, and that is illuminating because it's so totally different. I went along to one where a guy was interviewing drug cartel leaders in South America. And my first question to him was, I hope your insurance, I mean, you really do have to be incredibly careful with your own life if you are going to get involved. And he'd thought it all through very carefully. And it was just like a subject I'd never think anyone would cover. So it is worth going to some of those as well.
I've been in the past years in the SAS one, and he's just interested in the broad subjects that you come across, from history of arts to, and sometimes, you might be interested or not, but just having a different structure, a different way to present things, even from an academic point of view, different obligation on how to do things gives you ideas that, I can do that because it would help me, and so things that you haven't, you said, regarding how to get organized and so on. Sometimes we run behind because they suggest, just write, every day write, just write. And that's something that I was told at my interview before I got my place here at IALS. Unfortunately, the time is gone. I haven't been doing that. So now I regret it, but...
Well, you can now get back to it.
You can
Yeah.
start. It's never
Yeah,
too late.
exactly. Now I must start anyway, so now it has to be done, and that is going to be the only way forward. So
The question I always ask, if I've got an article or a book or whatever it is, will this appear in some form or another in the text? If not, I'm not going to read it. If it is likely to, then I'm reading it because I got the structure out. So I know pretty much where it's going to go, and I know, as you know, you get quite good at being to fill it, these things quite quickly, and say, yes, then that's going to go there.
I'll steal that bit.
Yeah, I'll steal that, exactly, I'll steal that bit. And that's going to be a line or a couple of
Comment,
lines
yes.
in that section, that's where it goes. And it'll go, and as you're reading it, bang, that's where it goes. No notes, goes in.
There was a wonderful, the guy, I don't know whether you've done your Zotero and EndNote for your bibliographical references, but the guy who teaches that is a historian, and his area of special interest is Viking funerals. And it's absolutely fascinating because he was going through all of his bibliographical references up on the screen to show us how to do it. And it was all about long boats and how people were put to death and how you buried them and what treasures. And I was thinking, oh, it's really interesting, but totally irrelevant, but really interesting.
I haven't used EndNote or Zotero. Has anyone else used that?
No, I just use strips of paper. I'm so old-fashioned. I chop up pages into strips of paper, and I shuffle all the references around. It's a bit like an air traffic controller.
Yeah.
You're moving them up and down.
you take one out and you move it in.
Yeah, but if it works for you, that's fine.
I haven't met anyone who
Apart
has.
from Zotero and EndNotes.
Oh, they're the software to help you with footnoting and
that software.
bibliographical
Yes,
references.
so example is that you take a journal article again, and you say what style you want the reference, whether it's going to be Harvard or Oscar or whatever it is, and it will put that automatically into the right style, and it will, you do the footnote, say, and it will do the bibliography entry for you, and it will link things from one chapter to another chapter, which is a bit of a pain. But I've never used it. Someone said that it took quite a long time to learn how to use it.
Do you know the name?
Sorry?
Do you know the name?
Well, it's just called Zotero.
There are two.
Or
There's Zotero
EndNote.
and EndNotes. Those are the two standard ones, and they're free. You download them.
So, which way did you do it?
I did
just the normal Word.
You did it by hand.
Well, yes, by hand. The footnoting one is easy.
Mm-hmm.
And then and when I put it into a footnote, I just cut and pasted it, put it into the bibliography.
I mean, lots of people do them by hand. I mean, I'm just turning up. Those are by hand ones. It's just like so old-fashioned. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, mine's
But
literally.
it's a question if it works for you. It works for you.
Yeah.
But I noticed when I went to the Zotero teaching that the young students were particularly keen on doing it, and it was embedded from day one that that's the way they were going to do it. Whereas I got much more interested in looking at how the Vikings buried them. Does anyone have anything else to add? I've got an eye on the clock here.
Yeah, I think that with the editing, I think you could look for, there are some free softwares. I know of one, Grammarly, that if you have in your computer, it just, just like Word does, that does it in more detail, looking at the grammar and everything, just underlying all that is going wrong with your things and things like that.
You've got standard software, you've got spell check, and you've got proofreading. And that does pick up probably 80–90% of what I want to do. I'm trying to think what it doesn't pick up. Yeah, obviously words which are spell checking won't pick up everything. Proofreading's not bad.
Oh, okay.
So what grammar?
Grammarly.
I use Grammarly.
Grammarly. Yeah.
Okay. I've seen advertising YouTube.
You can use it in your emails and all
Email,
those.
yes.
Everything.
Right.
That's on your computer.
If you're really lucky, you may have a wife, husband, partner who is actually happy to read it all and comment back. But that's like you have to be really lucky. Has everyone said their piece? Well, thank you all very much for coming along. You, if I may say so, you everyone rescued a situation that I thought was actually going to be, there were so few of us here. But in a way, sometimes having very few people can be more productive.
Yes.
The next session is on the Thursday, the 30th of November, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, at L103, and one of us will be giving a presentation on their research. Or if I can find two of us, then two of us will be doing it. Other than that, I think we can turn off the machine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Lena, in particular, for coming along.